Good afternoon, and welcome to this episode of MsDrKenya. I am excited about today's episode because it really speaks to my heart. I have had many conversations with parents doing presentations at churches, at schools, at organizations. And oftentimes in my conversations with parents, they share with me, for lack of better words, that they kind of feel like their hands are tied as it relates to advocating for their children in school. And so today I have an expert, someone who can really help parents to understand how important their voice is and how to go about advocating for their school. MsDrKenya audience, today I bring to you the president of the Free State PTA, which is the PTA for the state of Maryland, Mr. Gerrod Tyler. Mr. Tyler, welcome. How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing well, Dr. Coleman. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. As I was sharing in my intro, I have conversations with parents all of the time. And oftentimes they share with me some helplessness, some hopelessness as it relates to advocating for their children. And I try as best I can to help them to understand that of all of the stakeholders in schools, the parent voice is the most important. It is the loudest. It is the voice that will get results. And I feel like the PTA is like the quintessential organization to help parents to advocate, to utilize their voice, to get the results that they need in their school. So I'm going to pivot to you. You are definitely the expert today, and just ask you, first and foremost, what is the PTA?
Oh, yeah. Again, thank you for having me. The PTA is the Parent Teacher Association. We are a multi-tiered membership organization, and we are the nation's oldest child advocacy organization. So National PTA is over 125 years old. They have advocated over the years things that are in our school now, such as recess, hot and healthy lunches, child labor laws, are all the results of the advocacy of the legislative agenda from National PTA. And it carries on at the state level and at the county level and at the local level within schools. We are an advocacy organization where our goal is to always advocate for the needs of our children in our school communities, to make sure that our children can reach their potential, they can make their potential reality. And so, again, we advocate for the needs of our children. We advocate for the needs of our teachers. We advocate for the needs of our schools to the powers that be so that they understand what the community is saying or what we need. And so we hold leaders accountable. We advocate at every level of government so that, again, legislation is passed, funding is administered appropriately so that our children can have the resources to be successful.
That's amazing. So I heard you say that you are a multi-level organization. Can you break that down just a little bit further so that people can understand exactly what it is that you're saying?
Sure. So when you are a member of PTA, you're a member of every branch of PTA. So, for example, when you go to your PTA at your local school. We call them local units. So when you go to your local unit, you purchase your membership. When you purchase the membership of that school, you're also a member of Free State PTA, which is the state PTA, and National PTA, which is at the national level. We also have county council PTAs that offer another layer of support. So when we talk about advocacy, we make sure that there's multiple levels of support so those advocacy efforts are not on one person or a small group of individuals, but we connect and we partner so that we can combine our voices in so that, again, the school system or whomever the legislators are can hear our voice.
Okay, well, Mr. Tyler, you just educated me. Now, I knew about the school level, the state level, and the national level, but I just heard you say the county council. Now, that's new to me. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So because the state is so large, for example, Free State has over 700 units throughout the state and 72,000 members statewide. So again, at the state level, we empower small groups or what we call county council PTAs to we form them to offer support to the local units in that particular county. So if you're in Montgomery County, there's a county council. If you're in Frederick County, there's a county council. If you're in Baltimore County, there's a county council. If you're in Baltimore City, there's a county council. I think we have about 7 right now. Prince George's County is in the process of its formation, so it's coming. So I just want to let you know that the Prince George's County Council is on its way for the local units and PTA units in Prince George's County. So we're in that formation stage. It'll be there by the end of the year. But again, their job is to simply offer support. So one of the great things about PTA is if you join the PTA, especially if you become a leader or officer, you don't have to figure it out by yourself. This is what this multi-level support is for. We train our leaders. We make sure that the organizations are compliant to all the nonprofit laws and the IRS, of course, because we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. So we do all that training and that support, and then we help them. So, with every issues that are around.
Okay, so I heard you say you support them around whatever issues arise. So if I, as a parent, if I have some concerns about the experience that my child is having at school, for example,
Mhm.
is there anything too small to bring to the PTA? Like, what is appropriate for escalating, and what's appropriate for advocacy?
Sure. So we teach people how to advocate. The first thing we want to do is connect and build the partnership because, of course, when it comes to the parent and the school administration or the parent and the teacher, that relationship is critical. And so we want to also start there. And then if not, we help them point them to the right resources and give them strategies for building that partnership and see if there can be resolution. And then from there, we'll point them to the right direction. Sometimes in instances where a parent may be upset about process at a school, they may not understand where the fight is. Principal may feel the same way, but that's a mandate coming from above them. And so we also teach parents where the fight is. Is this issue a school issue? Is it a county issue? Is this a state legislative issue? Is this a national legislative issue? And so we help them navigate those troubled waters.
That was very, very powerful. That was very, very powerful. We help parents understand where the fight is. Like that, I feel like needs to be bolded, italicized, and highlighted because oftentimes, because our students are in the school building, right? We just kind of default to thinking that every conundrum, every concern can be addressed within the school building. And the truth of the matter is, there are so many different players that determine what happened on a day-to-day basis in school. Um, and the principal is not always the person who can affect change. So I appreciate you for calling out all of the different layers that contribute to what our students experience in the school building. I think we could actually just end the podcast right now because that alone was a lot of information. I don't think that people really know that or understand that. So I appreciate you for saying that the PTA will help you as a parent really peel back the layers to determine where do you go? Where do
Yeah.
you leverage your voice? Because it's not always at the school level. Oftentimes it is not at the school level. So thank you for that.
There's also another benefit because we teach our local units to partner with the school, the
Yeah.
principal, and the school administration. So sometimes the PTA, we kind of look at ourselves sometimes for the school administration as the pulse. We can tell you what's bubbling up in the school community, and so that can kind of give a forecast to the school leadership to understand what's coming, what are the pain points that the school community or the parents are having or our students are having, and then find ways to resolve those before it becomes bigger than it needs to be. And so that part of de-escalation can also occur because we are partnered. Our principals sit on our board of directors at
Yeah.
our local units. And so we believe in collaboration, and that's how we make the mission possible by that collaboration, bringing families and school administration and key stakeholders in the community together for the purpose of our children. Because I think the children is the one thing that we all can sit around and say we want to support them. I think they're the cause of why we do what we do, and we don't get paid. This is all out of love and volunteer. So I think that's the other power of the partnership there that PTA brings to the table.
I would agree. And that's why Kaleidoscope exists. It exists to
Yeah.
be a bridge between home and school, because oftentimes we have the same fight. And I don't know if people really realize that the principals and the educators in the school building are very much so aware of what's going on in the community. And it is because they are having conversations with the PTA. They are spending time with our children all day. They are overhearing the concerns of our children. They're working with our children. And so the school is not ignorant of the difficulties that our children experience. Um, so I appreciate you for saying that the advocacy does start at the local unit, which is, your child's school. And the goal is to collaborate and partner with the schools. We are not in an adversarial relationship. We actually do need each other to make sure that our children are holistically well. And that is the whole point of the PTA, is to make sure that our children, our youth are getting their needs met. So again, I love the PTA. When my daughter was in K through 12, I was definitely active in her school's PTA throughout all the years, and continue to be a great supporter of her. Now, you were talking about earlier some of the needs of our children, and one thing that our children need now more than they ever have is access to mental health support. And in the school system, that looks like whole child programming. Our babies right now are experiencing worrying and sadness, and some to the level of anxiety and depression like we've never seen it before. So I'm curious, did the PTA have anything to do with the current shift in schools that we're seeing on whole child development?
Yeah, we've always advocated for mental health resources in our school. And even in PTA, we have our own individual programs that we offer. What's called Healthy Lifestyles,
Mm.
and it's a mental health awareness program. And so it's a part of our legislative agenda, because we want children to be whole, in every facet of their life. And then we also want to make sure that the school boards, the county, the districts offer the correct funding, because again, when we talk about mental health from a legislative perspective, I think you won't find a lot of opposition to it conceptually, but we always know that the dog is in the details, right? And so it's more than just saying we agree with it. It's about being intentional about funding it so that each school has the mental health resources that they need so that the children can have the support that they need, especially post pandemic, which we all know had a devastating impact on kind of our social norms for our students. And so it's important, and we it's a part of our legislative agenda.
That was a word that you just said, right? That you won't hear people who are against it conceptually, but when it comes time to draft legislation to create the budget, that's when you can really see where folks' priorities really lie. And that is the role of the school board, correct?
Yes. Well, school board and the state, because some portion of the funding for the schools come from the state of Maryland, and the portion comes from federal funding as well. When you think about Head Start and things of that nature, so it's multifaceted, but primarily the school board is in the state is where we look at for school funding.
All right, thank you for that. So when it comes to SEL programming, social emotional programming, you said that the PTA has its own program, I believe is the word that you use. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure, it's called Healthy Lifestyle Styles. National PTA partners with a number of entities, and so with Healthy Lifestyles, I believe it was New York Life, and I think Walmart as well. And they have a individual program with guides that help promote healthy lifestyles, and that's looking at our children holistically, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And we know, again, coming out of the pandemic in particular, there were challenges socially, and so this program helps parents bring awareness to indicators that there may be issues. Also, it really is an educational program to bring education on what is mental health awareness. Or because again, we know the concept, we've heard these terms, but really understanding it on a deeper level and identifying indicators that hey, that my child may have some issues that I'm not aware of. And so we have programs and funding and grants that we offer local units to put on even mental health, wellness fairs. So I think, for example, Occidental High School did this last year, and I think another school in Prince George's County did it and got grant money to put on these fairs that brings awareness, not just to the school, to the student, but the entire community. And that is again helpful in bringing that awareness, so then we can then navigate when our children are having those social issues or emotional issues.
Mr. Tyler, do you find that schools are taking advantage of that? This programming that you have, is it widely used?
So the schools cannot access the program. The PTA has to do it because there's a delineation in the funding of custodian of funds between a school and a PTA. PTA is its own independent nonprofit. But again, the PTAs in the school, the parents, the school communities, they do get together and they do apply for those grants. And even if they don't win their grant, there's still resource. There are programs and toolkits that we give to all of our PTAs so they can bring those resources into the school. And then again, at the very least, if it's just to educate parents on mental health awareness, it's something that I think it's undervalued. I think we're starting to now come around to the concept of understanding mental health awareness, but there's still a lot to learn. And so again, just the education is valuable. So sometimes, especially when we talk about behavior and things like that, to unpack that correctly, because not all of us are trained in that arena, if you will, or in that wheelhouse. So it's important that just to learn some of the indicators to say, hey, I may uh need to look at some resources. And I think the other thing, if I may add, that's important is also understanding that mental health is not a bad word. And I think the narrative has to shift, because mental health is a real thing, and we all, need to monitor our mental health. I think a lot of times when we think about it previously, that narrative is if you have mental health issues, you're crazy or something is mentally. No, you just need helping. You need help in navigating some life challenges. And I think it teaches us to, take some self inventory, if you will, and not just for our children, but for ourselves as well as parents. And so I think again the program is amazing, and it helps us learn those concepts. And so it doesn't cost anything to bring those resources into the school. The PTA can do that.
Mr. Tyler, I feel like you just were all up in my thought process because as I was listening to you, I was reminded of a conversation. I literally did a presentation for parents on yesterday, talking about the connection between mental health and learning. And the parents were so prepared for me to talk about labels and diagnoses. And I helped them to understand that, yeah, that is true. There are some children, some people in the larger population who do definitely have ADHD and who do have major depressive disorder. But I want to call out that that is like 10% of the population, right? So, but that does not mean that the 90% that does not have a label, that does not have a diagnosis, that we aren't going through things. So when we
Right.
talk about our mental health, there's a lot of stigma associated with it because we tend to go to the extreme. We
Right.
tend to go to the pathology of it. But there's also a lot of health in mental health, right? If you begin to cultivate a practice of wellness, if you make it a part of your day-to-day life. And so quite consistent with the presentation that I did for the Free State PTA not too long ago, I talked to these particular parents about the importance of just validating your children. I say over and over and over again, and I'm going to continue to say over and over and over again, that the best intervention that we can do for any child, for any person really, is to validate them, to let them know that you see them and that you hear them, right? And that has nothing to do with the label or a diagnosis. And so I think that if we could just, I'm right there with you, reframe or redirect people's thinking around mental health to help them to understand that it's really not a bad word. Even if you do have a diagnosis, right? You do meet the criteria for a DSM-5 diagnosis. It's okay. There is help out there for you. It is no different from having diabetes or high blood
Right.
pressure. Like we accept that And, when you get that diagnosis, you talk to your doctor and say, okay, doc, now that I know that I have this thing, what do I need to do to manage it, right? How do I manage this thing and make sure that I can continue to live my life as I normally and typically would? The same thing is with the mental health diagnosis. Okay, well, now that you have told me that what I've been experiencing meets the criteria for major depressive disorder, for example, now, doc, what do I do? How do I manage this? It's the same conversation, but for some reason, we have highlighted mental health disorders as a bad thing, but we are accepting of physical disorders or medical disorders, for lack of a better word. Um,
Absolutely.
what do we need to do to continue to make strides to help people, not just the parents at the PTA, but the wider community, understand that it's okay to talk about a person's mental health. It's actually in your best interest to stop and check in with the person to see how they're doing, to see how they're doing. It's actually in your best interest to cultivate practices of wellness, so that as best you can, that you can manage and keep yourself in the middle, right? Like we all have highs and lows, but more often than not, you want to keep yourself right there in the middle when you're doing, okay, if nothing else. What do we need to do to shape that conversation with our parents?
Think we need to frame it in a platform that's digestible for them. Number one, I think. Two, I think it's also in the practice. I think we have to educate, but I think we have to also implement program that practices the concepts that you just mentioned. And I'm a firm believer of, like when I was the president of my local, we had a series called Crucial Conversations,
Mm,
and we would bring students in, and I'm a big advocate of student agency. I'm a big advocate of saying, parents, be quiet and just listen to them talk,
yeah.
and create the safe space for them to say how they feel without any type of fear of retribution or someone's going to look at them, crazy, and then listen and learn, and not always be the subject matter expert, but really be intentional about listening to each other, understanding our differences, understanding our pain points, understanding our struggles, and creating that space where it's okay to articulate that I'm struggling. It's okay to articulate that today I feel depressed. It's okay to articulate those things, and then point them. And when we having this programming, these sessions, to also have the resources available to assist, because we don't want you to leave saying I said something and you never did anything to help me, but point people and connect people to the right resources. So I think it's really a development of programming that the community can galvanize around, participate from. It's not always easy to put those things together, but I think it's critical to do so. The other thing I also think is also just, again, creating a space of transparency where, as parents, we can tell our students or our children that, hey, you know what? I have my bad days too. I have days that I don't feel well. I'll use myself as an example. My daughter is 17 years old, and I think last month, this week was her birthday. Her birthday was on Monday. She turned 17.
Oh,
And the start of school happened, and I had this thought, because she's my princess, she's my world. And I had this thought that in a year or two, she's not going to be at my hip anymore. She's not going to be here. And there was some real separation anxiety I was dealing with, that I had to talk to somebody like, why am I feeling this way? She's just a junior, but it's real. And again, it's teaching people how to do self inventory. It's teaching people. We have to educate people on those indicators and educate people on how to feel. It's okay to feel those ways, and here's how you process. And I think when we establish programming, not just for students, but for parents and also for teachers, because teachers go through a lot of stress as well. And we always tend to not and keep that at the forefront, because when things happen, we're always reactive. Oh my God, someone blew up at this person or whatever. But I think when we start looking at things and being proactive and having those discussions, I think it causes us to understand each other more, eliminate those stereotypes that prevent people from going and getting the help that they need.
yeah, thank you for that. I always tell parents that it's important that you model. It's unfair for
Yeah.
you to have expectations of your student that you do not model. especially around social media, because that comes up all the time. We
Yeah,
cannot limit our children's use of social media and then be up on it all day ourselves, right? We have
correct.
to model our expectations, but that's a whole different soapbox, so I'm not going to go there. I did hear you mention teachers, and they are the T in PTA.
That's
So
right.
what is the role of the educator in the PTA?
Their role is again to galvanize around supporting our local, supporting our students in our school community. They are the people that we entrust with our children for a good portion of the day. And it's an old adage, but it's true. It takes a village, and so they are part of that village, and so they are valuable. And in PTA, we celebrate our teachers. We support our teachers. We know that they're teachers that don't get the pay that they deserve, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Um, they're teachers that are spending their own money just to make sure that there's supplies in the room for students. The teachers are our unsung heroes, and so we in PTA we support them wholeheartedly. We advocate for them as well. We advocate for their step increases. We advocate for professional development allotment in the budget so they can have the resources they need to move with as to grow with the technology and the educational software and things that are becoming more prevalent. So we support them wholeheartedly, but we also understand it's not an easy job. It's a stressful job at times. And so we also advocate for mental health resources for our teachers, making sure that they have their vacation, making sure that they're substitute teachers so they can have their mental health days because it makes them better. And if they're whole and they're in a better place, they're better at educating our scholars.
Amen, period. That's all very true. If our educators are showing up and they are not in the right space, trust and believe that is impacting our children in the classroom. So we must make sure that our educators are well, like with the same level of energy and effort and intention that we lean into making sure that our students have mental health programming. We most definitely need to make sure that our educators have access to some of that same programming, right? Specific to where they are and their role, but our educators need support too. I agree with that wholeheartedly. As a matter of fact, there's actually a concept in the law called in loco parentis, right? Which literally means that when your child is at school, that your school, the educators are expected to show up for them, protect for them, provide for them as if they were their own children. And so I remember very specifically when I was in the school building, being a school-based social worker at the time, I always refer to them as our babies, and I still do, right? Because I did take ownership of my students. I'm with them. We were with them like a majority of the day. And so there's no way that you can spend, 10, 12 hours with a young person and, not be endeared toward them. So I don't necessarily know that people fully appreciate the role of educators. I think that post-pandemic, especially when schools shut down and parents have to do the work themselves, they kind of caught on as to how difficult that it really is. But being an educator, it's a tough job. It's a tough job. You got 20, 30 personalities to manage in a class. And that's easier said than done. So our educators definitely need support and they need advocacy as well. I agree with you wholeheartedly on that, Mr. Tyler. I truly do. When you look at all of the things that you have in your role in the time that you've been a part of the PTA and you've seen the various initiatives, are there some that stand out for you more than others? Are there some that you wish that we could kind of bring back that you feel like would be appropriate right now? Um,
Sure.
what initiatives do you think have been a success as far as creating safe and supportive environments for our children?
So a couple of things. I think from the space of diversity, equity, inclusion, I think we have a program called National School of Excellence, which celebrates PTAs who do work in their schools to bring awareness to the diversity and have plans on how we deal with the diversity within our school communities. And so there's so that the methodology is not monolithic, so it's germane to one group, but not necessarily meeting the needs of the other. But it's identifying the needs of our scholars, identifying the needs of our parents, identifying the needs of our school community, understanding our demographics. I think that program has done wonders for bringing awareness to the school community and looking at it holistically. I think also just the advocacy of bringing resources to the school is where the power of PTA really stems for me personally. I remember when I was the president of my daughter's school as a local unit, there were some things that just wasn't going on in the school, not the school's fault, but just the building itself. It was not adequate. The windows had, cracks in it, and children were having to put on their overcoats just to learn in school.
Oh,
And
wow.
so we did something about it. We advocated for a new HVAC system. We advocated for window replacement. We advocated for LED lights, and
Oh,
we fought tooth and nail, and we got it done. I mean, even from the technology perspective, even pre-pandemic, when my daughter was taking testing, they were sharing Chromebooks, and I said, well, that's not advantageous for them if they have to keep switching laptops. And so we got together as parents and we called it Project 100. We had 100 middle school students in the school at the time. We said as parent community, we're going to make sure our students have our one-to-one with technology, with laptops and Chromebooks, and that's exactly what we did. So even before the pandemic hit, our students had the devices to learn accordingly. So bringing those resources, standing up, having the crucial conversations series is really dear to my heart, because we talk to our students sometimes about subjects that I think are important that maybe parents don't talk about, and we're young enough to kind of connect, to bridge that gap. So this is back when we had the R. Kelly deal. We had conversations about predatory behavior, and making sure students, you understand, hey, these are things you should look out for. Here are some indicators. Here's who you should tell if you feel this way. You have a right. Teaching student agency. You have a right to voice your opinion. Your voice matters. Don't let people drown out your voice. And so we teach our students how to advocate as well. And so those are just some of the examples for me personally that PTA brought to the table, and I've been a part of it ever since. It's amazing work, and to see the benefits that of the resources that come to the school, or the smile that the children have, they're thankful. It makes it worth it.
I can imagine. I can imagine. It just dawned on me that we talked about the P, we talked about the T. There is no acronym for the role of administrator in the PTA, but I do want to talk about the role of the principal or the admin. I heard you say that at the local unit or the local schools, that oftentimes the and it may be all the time, and please correct me on that. That oftentimes the principal sits on the board. Can you speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah, that's how much we believe in that partnership between the school administration and the PTA. Principals, it's in our bylaws that principals are sit on our board of directors. And part of that is for awareness of what the PTA is doing, but also it's just for the partnership and the collaboration between what the PTA is doing and what the school initiatives are. And we want to align as much as possible so that we can support one another. Whether it be sitting around testing, hey, we can do something to bring awareness to the testing and how to prepare for it, or we can help with communication or help interpret test scores for parents who may not understand what an MCAP score is or what have you. Or if the county has requirements for volunteering, we can help bring resources to the school so you can get your fingerprinting done or what have you. So things like that. It's that partnership. We need them just like they need us. And when we are aligned, I mean, there's really no limit to what we can do. Also, we're a voice. We can say things that maybe they are not allowed to say. We can advocate and stand before school boards and say, we want this at our school. Um, we understand that, principals and those teachers and those administrators, they work for the school, the school's jurisdiction. So we stand in solidarity. We represent the issues. We advocate for the needs and for the school, and so that the school can be well, so the school can have the resources it needs to take care of our children. And so that partnership is absolutely critical. Oftentimes, it's give and take. We bring resources, but the school allows us to use their facility to host events, to host fundraisers, to host our meetings, those conversations, those awareness events, those fairs. They allow us to do that for free oftentimes. And so we're grateful to them as well.
Very good. So as a parent, right, if I am
Mhm.
I'm watching this and I am interested in learning more, like how can I get involved in my local unit's PTA?
Sure. Really go to the school administrator, schools, the front desk or the principal's office or the school office and ask for the contact information of the PTA. Oftentimes, most PTAs have social media or a website. Or you can go to your school secretary or your school administrator and get the contact information of the president of that local unit's PTA. We don't turn people away. So again, if you believe in the mission and values of PTA, which is really making our children's potential reality, by all means, get in contact with them, or you can contact me, the state level. You can email info@fspta.org and send an email, and we'll connect you with the school PTA leaders, and so that we can help you with that connection as well.
Are schools required to keep the information or to post the PTA information on their websites? Is that a requirement or just something that principals do if they want to make sure that folks know how to reach the PTA?
Right. They're not required to do that, but they often do that to share the information, um, just so that there can be collaboration. But they're not required to do it, no.
Okay. And so what are some of the things that that the Free State PTA is focusing on right now?
So we're working on our legislative agenda as we speak. Of course, Maryland Blueprint is a big thing right now. So we're looking at that. We're working with MsDE on how we do assessments. That's a big thing of interpreting those MCAP scores and what have you, and is the looking at the methodology of the testing. Um, Also, just a lot of other issues such as food equity. That's a big thing. Again, when we talk about learning, do our children have decent meals and hot and healthy lunches and things of that nature? Are there resources available for those who can't afford to purchase school lunch? So we're working on a host of initiatives. There's some other hotbed issues that we're dealing with, that we can talk about a little bit later once we make a decision on our agenda. But we're actually just really focusing on those things, especially when it comes to the budgeting piece of getting funding for our schools. The other thing I also want to ask is this the school environment. Um, Capital improvement is a big thing. Some schools are so old they should have been decommissioned a long time ago, but yet we're using them. And so we're looking at, we're tracking and advocating for funding so that, again, there's equity across the board and resources distributed to our children, making sure that programs, like CTE, are valued just as much as a college readiness programs, and making sure that, hey, trade is good as well, making sure you have a career path and that those resources and classes are available to all of our students. And so we're advocating for the needs of our scholars.
Amazing. Can we talk about the state assessment real quickly?
Sure.
I think oftentimes, even with grades, right? You look at your child's report card, your child has an A, your child has a B, great, and you move on. Your child has gotten a grade that you think that meets your requirement, for lack of better words. However, what happens is when we don't take a deeper dive to really investigate, what that particular grade means or what that number means or what it is telling you, you can miss out on very valuable information. And so the example that I used in the episode is oftentimes when you look at the printout for the assessment, there's a bar graph that says this is the normal range. You look at it, if my child is in normal range or above, I'm cool, I go on about my day. However, we also need to stop and look at those assessments to see if your child is making progress and to interrogate like the actual skills that contribute to that overall category. So reading, for example, there are several different skills that fall under reading. and your child could be doing extremely well in one skill and poorly in another. But the aggregate of that would be in the normal range. So I heard you say that the PTA was trying to help parents to understand that and do a better job of being able to look at the assessment protocols and really determine what they mean, or did I misunderstand what you were saying?
So yeah, we're working with the state board of education. One thing I will say about Dr. Wright, who's the state superintendent, this is on her radar. I've heard her speak very clearly and articulate that she want to make sure that parents do understand how to interpret those scores, and more importantly, understand, what are the action items that as a parent I should take, or what are the recommendations that I should have to help further uh, my scholars' education based on those test scores. Because you're right, it's more than just a proficiency rating, but it's also what progress have I made, and then two, what are the takeaways. And so, there's a task force that she created that I sit on as well, that's looking at that, and really we've talked. The task force is not that this work is not done, it's ongoing, is in progress, but we've talked specifically about the branding
Mm.
and the awareness, making sure that parents know that there are resources there. You can call the state and they can help you with interpret those scores if you are confused about them, or you can sit down and take those scores and talk about it with your scholar and your teacher to put out an action plan. If you can develop an action plan based on that. So I think they're looking at that right now, and figuring out ways to help make this more digestible to the parent. Also, part of the challenge too is when you get the scores back, you're already, it's normally the next year. So, we have to look at it from that, because then too, when the score doesn't necessarily affect your academic roadmap, then we want students to take the assessment seriously, but we want to make sure it's interpreted the correct way as well. So there's a lot of moving parts with that, but I know that the task force, we're looking at branding and really looking at the methodology of the test as well, to see how we can make this more efficient for all parties involved.
That's amazing. You just educated me. I did not know that there was a task force. I certainly did not know that parents could reach out to the state to
Yeah,
get help with evaluating and understanding what the numbers meant. I think that is absolutely amazing. And it's
yeah.
definitely needed. Do you know, and right now, Mr. Tyler, I'm being nosy, and I'm just gonna be I'm being nosy right now.
All right.
Um, do you know what prompted that to be on the superintendent's list of things to prioritize? Like, why did she make that a priority? I'm just curious. It needs to be a
Well,
priority, but I'm
yeah.
just as to how she got there.
Well, I think for her coming in as the state superintendent, she looked at the school education system on a macro level.
Yeah,
I think for her, coming from her background, from my understanding, she took Mississippi and the educational system, and it skyrocketed under her leadership. So I'm happy to have her at the
yeah,
state level. I just think it's part of her strategy. I think when she looks at things, she wants to make everything. And I'm not speaking for just knowing from what I've heard her say. She wants to make things clear, digestible, and so that parents know what's going on. But more importantly, parents know where the resources are, where
yeah.
they can go get help and assistance if they need it. She cares, and I don't say that to pump someone up. I really, from sitting there listening to her, just work with school district leaders, superintendents on this task force. She absolutely cares. So that's really the premise of where it come from. I think it's from her previous experience. She can tell it better than I can. Let me say that. I don't want to put too many words, speak for it on that line, but I just think it's a part of her strategy and how she's approaching the school system, and making education in Maryland better for our students.
Well, Mr. Tyler, she sounds absolutely amazing. I am definitely going to Google her and
Oh yeah.
Facebook stalk her so I can learn a little bit more about her. But it sounds amazing. I am so happy to hear that she has prioritized that, because I talk about it all the time. Like, you really need to take a deeper dive and not just look at whether or not your child is in normal range, proficient, whatever language you want to use. You really have to take a deeper dive. And I'm so grateful that at the state level, there is help for parents to really be able to peel back the layers and to understand what those assessments are saying, how to track progress, how to create an action plan. Like, all of that gets the educator, the parent, the psychologist, the social worker, the nerd in me very excited. So all of me is happy to hear that. So thank you for letting me know that. Um,
So
I have run out of questions to ask you, Mr. Tyler, to be honest. Is there anything else that you want to say that you think that is important for people to know about the PTA, or just anything in general? Because you wear several hats, as you have told us here today. So are there any final words that you want to share with the audience?
sure, I would tell parents, teachers, students, and members of the community, because one thing about PTA is you don't have to have a child in the school to be a member of the PTA. Um, but I would say be the change that you want to see. And this is kind of my personal message to everyone. You can make a difference, but you got to step up to the plate. Don't wait for other people to do what you can do yourself. And it starts with one person talking to one person, advocating. And as you grow, I will tell everyone, and I say this to be completely honest, educate yourself on how the school system works. Um, you can't fight the fight if you don't know the playbook. And so what I'm telling folks is you need to go to school board meetings, go to county council meetings. If you can't go, watch them on YouTube. They're posted on YouTube. Understand what your local school board member, your county council member, your state legislator, your county legislators are doing. Because oftentimes you won't, well, I won't say that. Oftentimes you don't really hear as much from them until it's election time. But you need to understand and make educated votes. So do your due diligence, study with it, and then get involved in your community. You got to be the change that you want to see. I will say this with all honesty and sincerity. By the time folks react to things, the decisions are normally already made. You got to stay informed. The power is in the information. When you know what's going on, then you can alert your community members of what's going on. And then you guys can advocate and do something about it. You should know who your state legislator is. You should know who your county legislator is. You should know who your school board member is and what area your school resides in. We have to learn the civics of this. And once we empower ourselves with that education, then we can also learn the different levels of where to advocate. And that's what I mean when I say know the fight. Learn the system and know where these issues lie and where you can make the most change from. And so this is what we do at PTA in our advocacy efforts. Again, if you want to join the PTA, all you have to do is say the word. Email me at info@fspta.org or contact your school. If your school has a PTA, they will definitely put you in contact. If your school does not have a PTA, you could be the reason they start a PTA. Contact me. We'll go together because I believe PTA should be in every school. And we have PTAs and PTSAs. And the only difference is that when we get to middle and high school, students are members and then their voice matters. And we teach student agency. So again, thank you for having me. But that's what I want to, the message I want to leave that, to parents and community stakeholders, be the change that you want to see.
Yeah, and I do want to circle back to something that you said, because you said it more than once. And it didn't resonate with me until the second time. But I want to stop and say this. Like, oftentimes, because we're in a election year, right? So everybody's going to go to the polls in November to vote, because we feel like this is an important vote, and it is. However, um, we vote generally every 2 years, right? And while we vote for, our president every 4 years, we have local elections that impact us on a very intimate level. Um,
Absolutely.
and particularly what our children experience in school. So
That's right.
yes, get out and vote in November. I am not telling you not to. I do not want anybody to misunderstand what I am saying. However, you need to show up and vote every time, all the
Absolutely.
time. because it
Yes.
is the local elections that really have an impact on how you live day to day.
That's right.
In particular, as it relates to schools, you definitely want to get out and vote for your school board members. You have to know who they are, what their agenda is, what their platform is, and vote based upon what you think your child needs and what your child's school needs, right? Do not put that power into the hand of the small few. Your voice absolutely does count. You vote for your school board members, and then you vote for your county members, you vote for your state leadership. All of that impacts your child's experience in schools day to day,
That's right.
right? So when Mr. Tyler says know where the fight is, what he's saying is that there's levels to it, to
That's
make a
right.
long story short. And you have to know what the levels are and understand that you have a voice at every level. So thank you, Mr. Tyler, for reiterating that. That needs to be said. Okay. And with that, I'm going to say thank you guys for joining me this month. This was a rich conversation, lots of good information, lots of good nuggets in here. You're probably going to have to go back and watch it 2 or 3 times to catch everything, because Mr. Tyler was dropping gems if you were paying attention. But make sure that you stop and pause and get all of the nuggets as it relates to advocacy, as it relates to, who to go to for what. And know that you can be a part of this important work. All you got to do is reach out to your local unit. If you can't do that, or that is becoming cumbersome for you, Mr. Tyler has shared his contact information. We will share his contact information at the end of the podcast. He has generously volunteered to help you out. So either way, make sure that you lean into this work, because it is, in fact, good work. And with that, I say goodbye. Have a good one.